Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, happy Sunday. Sunday fun day. We are going to learn, as always. My name's Connor. Well, mostly. My name's Connor, if you're new. The original link to the video, top of the description, from Epic History. Love this channel. Nelson's battles in 3D. In 3D. The Nile. So this is the second video, I think, of a series of videos that Epic History is doing about the sea battles of the Napoleonic Wars. I believe this is the second one. Let's go. I'm ready. If you are not ready to learn, you're in the wrong class. I used to say that all the time. I gotta bring that back.
An Epic History Drakenfell collaboration. In 1792, the French Revolution sparked a European conflict that would last a generation. A struggle for mastery of Europe and the world. A contest fought on land and sea. In this war of shifting alliances, the most enduring rivalry was between France and Britain. Britain could not challenge France on land, but at sea, it was a different matter. Britain's Royal Navy was as dominant on the waves as Napoleon was to prove on land. And in an age when Britain...
Imagine if France and its land army, and Britain and its naval prowess joined together. I know there's a reason that, the two top powers usually don't. I'm just saying, they'd be unstoppable.
Had many skilled naval commanders. One stood out above the rest. Horatio Nelson. Bold, inspiring, and brilliant. For the British, he'd become a national hero and legend. These are the stories of his greatest battles.
Now, I remember learning, I think it was an Epic History, I'm almost positive, it was another Epic History video, from Napoleon's perspective when he was in Egypt. And I remember thinking how crazy, and him being such a giant, as giant a figure in history as you can be. Who else is that big? Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great. The amount of times in his journey through the Mediterranean that the story of Napoleon could have just been snuffed out, because it seemed like there were so many close calls with the British Navy on his tail, and if he was captured, that'd be the end of him. But it never happened. So funny how that works out. Duty is the great business of a sea officer. All private considerations must give way to it. Captain Horatio Nelson, 1786.
1798. The 6th year of the French Revolutionary Wars. And France is winning. General Bonaparte's brilliant victories in Italy have forced Austria to sue for peace. Spain, once France's enemy, is now an ally.
Sorry, I roll my eyes because it seems like Austria was given way too many chances by France to be like, okay, we surrender. All right, no, we're against you again. All right, no, we sign. No, wait, we're against you.
Italy,
I gotta stop.
have
I'll
forced
stop.
Austria to sue for peace. Spain, once France's enemy, is now an ally. Britain is the only major power still at war with the French Republic. British naval power makes a cross-channel invasion impossible. So the French government decides to strike at Britain indirectly by sending an expedition led by General Bonaparte to conquer Egypt. If the French succeed and destroy British influence and trade in the region, they will strike a powerful blow against their last major enemy. The previous year, the British defeated a Spanish fleet at the Battle of Cape St. Vincent. But the Royal Navy currently has no major forces in the Mediterranean. Therefore, the French believe they can sail to Egypt in relative safety. When the British learn that a large French fleet is assembling at Toulon, they send Rear Admiral Nelson with 3 ships of the line to investigate. But he is driven south.
I hope I didn't already forget this, but guys, ship of the line, that's like you're a main battleship in like World War II words, right? Forget it.
To investigate. But he is driven south by gales, just as the French, with 13 ships of the line, several frigates, and hundreds of transports, set sail. Bonaparte has given the British the slip.
Not the first time. I mean, not the last time. It's an old saying, the devil's children have the devil's luck. I cannot find, or at this moment learn, where the French fleet have gone to. Nelson in Sicily.
Nelson is reinforced with 11 ships of the line. And learning that the French have stopped at and captured Malta, he correctly deduces that Egypt is their destination. He sets off at full speed to intercept. The British warships are much faster than the French invasion force, but they overtake their quarry on a foggy night. And though the 2 fleets pass within a few miles of each other, neither side spots the other.
Fast forward if you want, okay? You don't have, I'm pausing too much. Whatever. Fast forward if you want. Just it makes me think, like, at first I'm like, wow, the amount of, like, a little bit of fog or some fog could change so much world history. You know, like the butterfly effect, that's like the meteor effect. But it also makes me think of how many giant names in history and giant events would have happened if they were given some lucky scenario, right? It's not like every historical figure and historical event was destined since the beginning of time to happen. It happened the way it happened, right? It's like saying, you know, what are the chances life came up on this one planet right here and it's always... Well, it had to have gone on some planet. I'm going too far here. You know what I mean? So think about all of the historical figures that are never historical figures because they didn't get these lucky chances or something.
Neither side spots the other. Unaware of their near miss, the British race on to Egypt. Arriving at Alexandria, Nelson sees no sign of the French and heads north to continue the hunt.
God.
He misses Bonaparte's fleet by 24 hours. The French land safely in Egypt and march inland, en route to a famous victory at the Battle of the Pyramids. The French fleet remains at anchor in Abu Qir Bay. More than a month later, word finally reaches Nelson in Sicily that the French fleet is in Egypt. Racing back to Alexandria with his squadron, he arrives on the 1st of August. He quickly locates the French fleet and prepares to attack. The French fleet is commanded by Admiral François-Paul Bruez d'Aguillet. He is an experienced commander who saw action at the Battle of the Chesapeake during the American Revolution.
Hey.
He's now a rare thing in the Navy of the French Republic, a 45-year-old aristocrat who's neither fled abroad nor been guillotined. Recently promoted to Vice Admiral, he has a reputation for
French pronunciation can be so confusing sometimes.
Recently promoted to Vice Admiral, he has a reputation for personal courage mixed with strategic caution. Admiral Bruez has one objective: to preserve his fleet. Bonaparte's army relies on his ships for communications and supplies from France. What What's more, when Nelson arrives, almost a third of his crews are ashore, foraging for water and supplies. Admiral Bruez concludes he must fight a defensive battle. His fleet, 13 ships of the line and 4 frigates, will remain anchored in Aboukir Bay.
Guys, isn't desalination, this could sound really stupid, just like getting a large boiler with a spout at the top that is a lot colder than the water down there, so you can put seawater in and then it evaporates in as fresh water and then condenses again? Could they have had that stuff on board? That was too stupid for a pause. Forget that. Just get rid of it. Wasn't worth a pause.
13 ships of the line and 4 frigates will remain anchored in Aboukir Bay, in line and just under a mile from shore. His own flagship, the first-rate 120-gun L'Orient, is in the center. Shoals and shallow water protect their western flank, meaning the French, with their reduced crews, only have to man the guns on one side.
Smart.
Bruez issues orders for each French ship to secure itself to its neighbors, fore and aft, with heavy cables. The fleet is to form an unbreakable wall of ships, ready to resist any attack. Bruez well knows the reputation.
Wouldn't a ship going through this cord damage the ships the cord is attached to more than the ship going through them? Or is this just for formational purposes so that they can fire and sink?
The attack. Unbreakable wall of ships, ready to resist any attack. Bruez well knows the reputation of his enemy, Rear Admiral Sir Horatio Nelson. The previous year, Nelson had been feted for his heroic role at the Battle of Cape St. Vincent, but 5 months later, he'd lost his right arm following a failed attack on the Spanish at Tenerife. He'd spent the rest of the year convalescing ashore, and therefore missed the British victory over the Dutch at Camperdown that October. Something he found so frustrating, he declared he'd happily have given his other arm for the chance to take part.
Forget where Tenerife
Having
is.
found the enemy fleet, Nelson is determined to engage and destroy it. And he has sound strategic reasons for a high-risk attack on the French. If Nelson can destroy their fleet, the French army in Egypt
Stuck there.
will be stranded, far from home, amid a hostile climate and population. It will mean the failure of Bonaparte's expedition, without a single redcoat stepping ashore. Nelson has 13 third-rate ships of the line, plus the 50-gun Leander, and a small sloop for running messages. Facing 13 French ships of the line and 4 frigates, the two forces are evenly matched.
I always give if you're close to evenly matched, then I don't think it's evenly matched, just because I imagine British know-how of sea fighting and just better ships and commanders means you have an advantage. So I think you need much more to...
Though the French flagship L'Orient, with 120 guns, is far and away the most powerful warship present.
Okay.
Nelson decides on a night attack that will exploit Bruez's caution. He will advance along the seaward side of the French line, and when his vanguard reaches the French flagship, L'Orient, his ships will drop anchor. His entire fleet will take on half the French fleet, with northerly winds preventing the remaining French ships from joining the battle.
Oh my god, I love it.
Nelson's plan is...
I'm not rooting for anyone. To be honest, I kind of like both sides equally.
bold and simple.
For once, I'm not rooting for the British. Or neither side.
Remaining French ships from joining the battle. Nelson's plan is bold and simple, but it will not go as intended.
Before this time tomorrow, I shall have gained a peerage or Westminster Abbey. Before this time tomorrow, I shall have gained a peerage or Westminster Abbey. Someone help me out with that. Was it Nelson to his ship's officer shortly before the battle? Okay. I'm assuming it's a cocky phrase.
The British fleet begins its final approach at 6 p.m. under full sail, in line astern.
Fantastic animation.
The 74-gun HMS Goliath is in the lead. She is followed by HMS Zealous and HMS Audacious. The wind is from the northwest.
Stay hydrated, guys.
Calm. The British do not have reliable maps of the bay, meaning there is a real risk of running aground. So HMS Goliath has to take careful soundings as she goes, checking the sea's depth. When Goliath rounds the end,
I know they use a series of knots on a cable, but I always wondered how they could tell how much that rope is swaying underwater. That might create a diagonal and making you think it's deeper than it really is. I know they had to have had a solution to that. I just don't know it.
When Goliath rounds the entrance to Aboukir Bay, marked by shoals and a small island, the British begin their turn south to sail with the wind towards the French line. The French have been observing the British approach, and at 6:20 p.m., as Goliath comes within range, they open fire.
I'm excited right now.
As Goliath comes within range, they open fire.
Giant floating shotguns.
Nelson has always encouraged his officers to use their initiative. So when Captain Foley, commanding HMS Goliath, sees there is a gap between the French ships and the shoals, he makes a snap decision to sail down it.
But then your whole
Goliath's
wind
course will be followed by Zealous, Audacious, Orion, and Theseus.
But then his whole wind trajectory thing will now work in the French's favor. Now instead of them.
Followed by Zealous, Audacious, Orion, and Theseus. Nelson's flagship, HMS Vanguard, will now lead the rest of the fleet down the seaward side of the French line. Captain Foley's bold decision exploits a disastrous oversight by Admiral Bruez. He has assumed that the shoals make it impossible for him to be attacked from the landward side. Now, not only will his vanguard be doubled, attacked on both sides, but French guns on the landward side are not even ready for action. There are barely enough sailors to man them. As Goliath passes across the bow of Guerrier, she fires a raking broadside into her, round shot smashing its way down the length of the ship. Each following British ship blasts Guerrier in the same merciless manner.
Question. If you captured a ship, did the French and the British purposely have different caliber or size cannons or cannonballs so that if their ship was captured, the enemy that captured them couldn't take advantage of their stock of ammunition? Or if you captured a ship, could you steal the ammunition and it would work fine?
HMS Orion takes a wider track to avoid the melee developing at the head of the French line. This will bring her past the French frigate Sérieuse in the shallows. According to convention, ships of the line did not normally fire on frigates during fleet actions. But when the captain of Sérieuse fires on Orion, he waives this protection. Orion holds her fire until she passes the French frigate, then returns fire at point-blank range. Her heavy broadside smashes the French frigate to pieces. The British landward column now drops anchor to take on the French vanguard, while the seaward column, led by Nelson aboard HMS Vanguard, arrives to hit the French from the other side. Each ship's captain singles out a target and drops anchor alongside. Vanguard alongside Spartiate, Minotaur against Aquilon, Defense against Peuple Souverain. 5 French ships are now under attack from 8 British ships, most of them from both sides.
Didn't you do friendly
HMS
fire?
Bellerophon and Majestic now join the battle. They head for the center of the French line. Bellerophon aims for Franklin, but overshoots and comes alongside Admiral Bruez's formidable flagship, L'Orient. HMS Majestic also misjudges her approach, becoming entangled with Tonon and fighting 2 French ships simultaneously. By 7 p.m., the light is fading. 2 miles north, the last British ship, HMS Culloden, cannot make out the edge of the shoals and runs aground. HMS Leander and the sloop Mutine divert to try to tow Culloden clear. But it will prove a futile task. Culloden's fate shows just how small the room for error has been during the British approach.
You're gonna take 3 ships out instead of 1?
The French vanguard has now been under heavy attack for 30 minutes. Conquerant has been completely dismasted. Her captain is dying. A third of her crew are casualties. She is first to strike her colors. But it's not all one.
A ship that annihilated, casualty means both death and, in military terms, death and injured, right? I'm really surprised in a ship that got that thoroughly bombarded had 2/3 of its crew unharmed.
One was first to strike.
Interesting.
She is first to strike her colors. But it's not all one-way traffic. HMS Bellerophon is heavily outgunned in her contest with L'Orient. "200 men, a third of her crew, have been killed or wounded, and she's lost her main and mizzen masts. Her captain gives the order to cut the anchor cable, so the ship will drift out of the firing line. Around 8:30, 2 British stragglers, HMS Swiftsure and Alexander, join the battle late. In the smoke and gloom, they pass the drifting hulk of Bellerophon and nearly fire on her by mistake. Swiftsure and Alexander break the enemy line either side of L'Orient, pouring raking fire into the French flagship. Aboard Vanguard, Nelson's been hit in the forehead by a splinter. His face streaming blood, he thinks it's the end. "I am killed," he announces. "Remember me to my wife." But he's soon stitched up by the ship's surgeon and back in command. The wounds of French Commander Admiral Bruez aboard L'Orient are far more serious. Horribly injured in the face and hands, he's then hit by a cannonball that removes his legs. He still refuses to leave his post on deck and dies there. As As darkness falls, Guerrier and Spartiate, which have been under heavy fire for more than 2 hours, both strike their colors.
Guys, even if you're completely out of, like, the battle stops, no more fighting, that's you're dead. Like, if you have an appendage blown off, like an arm or a leg, sorry. I mean, you're dead, aren't you? Well, no, because never mind. Sorry.
Heavy fire for more than 2 hours, both strike their colors. Around the same time, HMS Leander breaks the French line between Peuple Souverain and Franklin, raking both. The battle is turning decisively in the Royal Navy's favor. Aquilon fights hard, turning herself to rake the British flagship HMS Vanguard. But in turn, she is raked by HMS Minotaur and hauls down her colors at 9:25. Peuple Souverain tries to escape by cutting her anchor cable and drifting down the French line. L'Orient mistakes her for the enemy and opens fire. Minutes later, the flicker of flames is seen through the lower deck gun ports of L'Orient. The fire spreads deck by deck until the massive French flagship is ablaze from stem to stern. Every onlooker knows that deep within L'Orient's hold lies her grand magazine, containing 30 to 40 tons of gunpowder. All ships in the vicinity take emergency measures. Gun ports are closed, and ships' sides, decks, and sails are soaked with water from the elm pumps in anticipation of the explosion to come. French ships Tonnant, Heureux, and Mercure cut their anchor cables, hoping to drift to a safe distance.
But
around 10 p.m., the fire reaches L'Orient's grand magazine. The warship is obliterated in a colossal explosion, killing everyone left on board, and many who jumped overboard to save themselves. More than 90% of the ship's crew are killed, around 1,000 men. The sheer force of the explosion spares nearby ships, as flaming wreckage is blasted up and over them.
something extremely terrifying. I've never been in any serious... Obviously, all I can do is imagine what such a terrifying war scenario would be like. But I can think that you can't really be routed on a ship. Your best chance is just cutting your anchor and hoping you drift. And so there's that, I'm sure that extra bit of terror of just knowing that, like, maybe on land you have legs, you can run somewhere, maybe in the middle of nowhere you end up dying, but just knowing that you either jump in the water or you're at the mercy of the tides and anyone firing at you has to be one of the most terrifying experiences you could possibly have. Me saying that, knowing nearly nothing about war, but in my imagination, that sounds horrifying. Even in
stunned, both
context of
sides
war.
stop firing to gaze in horror at the spectacle. British ships lower boats to rescue the few survivors. After a 10-minute lull, firing resumes. But after the appalling destruction of their flagship, the French are running out of fight. Swiftshore and Defense turn their guns on Franklin and soon force her surrender. Tonnant, having cut her cables and unable to maneuver, drifts helplessly into the French rearguard. These 3 ships, unable to sail into the wind to join the action, have looked on impotently as the carnage unfolds.
Victory is not a name strong enough for such a scene. Nelson's overhang, Abu Qir Bay, 2nd of August.
Dawn on the 2nd of August revealed a terrible scene of death and destruction. John Nichol of the Goliath was a witness. I went on deck to view the state of the fleets, and an awful sight it was. The whole bay was covered with dead bodies, mangled, wounded and scorched. Not a bit of clothes on them, except their trousers. The entire French vanguard had been captured or destroyed. Heureux and Mercure have run aground in their panicked attempt to escape the explosion of L'Orient. The 4 surviving French ships of the line will now attempt to fight their way clear. 2 run aground. Only the Généraux, Guillaume Tell, and 2 frigates escape the devastation. The captain of the Guillaume Tell, Pierre Villeneuve, will face sharp criticism for failing to play a greater part in the battle. 7 years later, as fleet commander, he will face Nelson again at Trafalgar. British losses are 218 killed, 678 wounded. 3 ships are badly damaged: Bellerophon, Majestic and Culloden. French losses are around 1,700 killed and more than 3,000 taken prisoner, many of them wounded. 2 ships of the line and 2 frigates have been sunk. 9 have been captured. Of these, 3 are damaged beyond repair and burned. The remaining 6 enter service with the Royal Navy. To cap it all, most of the French treasury that General Bonaparte was relying on to fund his Egyptian campaign had been lost with L'Orient.
First gain the victory and then make the best use of it you can. Nelson.
Nelson's brilliant victory at the Nile had major consequences. The balance of naval power in the Mediterranean shifted dramatically in Britain's favor. General Bonaparte's expeditionary force in Egypt was cut off, and though its commander slipped back to France the following year, his army was forced to surrender in 1801. The French garrison of Malta also surrendered, the island becoming a British protectorate.
Guys, because Napoleon wasn't as significant a French asset, or just a significant of a figure in the Napoleonic Wars, like he became more and more prominent and important as the years went on since the French Revolution. And so sometimes I have to kind of gauge my, to the French, to the British at this point, Napoleon escaping isn't as absurdly a failure of not capturing him as it would be if this was, 8 years later. So I sometimes have to think about that. It's not like he's a lot of other leaders in conflict that were the main man since the start of the conflict. So I have to think about that a bit.
French defeat encouraged her enemies to form a new second coalition and renew
There goes
the war.
Austria.
Nelson was the hero of the hour, feted in royal courts from London to St. Petersburg and Constantinople. He received jewels, medals, ceremonial swords, and his long-coveted peerage, Baron Nelson of the Nile.
So that's a peerage.
The Nile Nile was one of the most decisive and crushing naval battles.
So a peerage is a title.
The Nile.
Which I'm curious why he said title and parliament earlier in that quote.
Nile.
It's 25 minutes already. That went by so quick.
The Nile was one of the most decisive and crushing naval battles in history. Some historians argue it was the most significant
Even more than
Nelson
Trafalgar?
ever fought. But the battle with which Nelson's name was to be forever linked would be fought 7 years later, off Cape Trafalgar.
I pronounced Trafalgar like such like a Bostonian right there, New England. Trafalgar?
Have you ever wanted to hear more from the ordinary soldiers and sailors of the Napoleonic Wars? What did combat look like from the front rank of the Grande Armée, or Wellington's army in Spain? What was it like to charge into the breach at Badajoz, or face Spanish partisans in the guerrilla war? In our next video, Epic History is bringing to life a score of dramatic eyewitness accounts from the peninsula.
There's a channel called Voices of the Past. I don't want to like promote another competing history channel. I mean, I feel like history channels don't really, we want to learn history. But I think there's a channel called Voices of the Past that has some really cool accounts, like people that were there at the time of like when the Chinese and Romans met, or like the first time someone saw guns or something like that. It's a cool channel. I'll recommend it.
Peninsular War from French, British, Spanish, German and Polish veterans. And if you want to be first to see this new documentary, you can head over to prestige streaming service Nebula. Nebula is a streaming service built...
Of course, we're going to watch through this, guys, at least at the very least until the promo codes and links come up. If you're interested, make sure to use that stuff, not just for any convenience or gifts you might get, bonuses with that link, but using the links that good channels give to you makes it so that the people supporting them know that they're getting their money's worth and could keep supporting them. So I don't think channels say that enough when they talk about their sponsors. It's like, please, like, use their promo codes, their links. It helps them out a lot, and it'll help you out, you know?
Built by creators to offer a superior experience to other video
Not
platforms.
just Epic History,
Here, there are no
any
ads,
channel I watch.
Just hand-picked creators you can trust, working hard to create original, quality content. It's the most interesting...
Freaking awesome video, by the way. Amazing as always. Just in case anyone leaves and they have any doubt, that's my reaction.
Fastest-growing independent video platform on the internet, and because it's owned and run by creators, the emphasis will always be on creating more thoughtful and ambitious content.
I gotta pee really bad. Love y'all, guys.
Nebula also fairly...
I didn't realize that I paused it before I left there, guys, but obviously Nebula is a streaming service where if you love history, you can see a lot of stuff from great YouTubers and see it earlier than you would before, and some exclusive stuff, I'm sure, too. So make sure to use the
40%
sorry,
discount.
the / Epic History TV. All right, guys. Love y'all. Hope you're all doing well. See you guys next time. We'll keep learning.